I'm Emily Carson, 33, the youngest of three sisters. I thought maybe this Christmas they'd finally save me a seat. But once again, my name wasn't even mentioned. Instead, I found my kids' coats in a cardboard box in the basement, so I stayed quiet. But something else came with me that day. The first snow of December had just dusted the rooftops when I pulled into my parents' driveway. The house looked exactly like it did every Christmas, lights perfectly strung along the porch, a plastic Santa waving stiffly by the front door. Inside, I could already imagine the cinnamon candles burning, the hum of carols, the clink of wine glasses. Everything carefully staged. Everything perfect. Except, of course, me. My kids, Noah and Lily, sat quietly in the back seat, bundled in matching coats I'd found on sale. Noah looked up and asked, "Are we staying the night here, Mom?" His voice had hope in it, and I hated that. "I'm not sure yet," I said, forcing a smile. I knew what was coming before it even happened, but it still stunned me how casually my mother delivered it. Standing in the hallway in her pearl sweater, arms folded, she greeted Claire with open arms, then turned to me like I was the mailman. "There's no room left, Emily," she said, not unkindly. "With Claire's kids and the guest room prepped for Uncle Don, we're full up. I figured you'd understand." Understand. That word, as if I'd be unreasonable not to. I nodded slowly, swallowing everything I wanted to say. Claire's kids were younger, sure, but we were family too. I'd brought gifts. I'd offered to cook. I even took 2 days off work to come early and help decorate. And still, I wasn't welcome, not really. I was furniture, an afterthought. Maybe even an inconvenience. Noah tugged at my coat. "Where do we sleep then? We'll figure it out," I whispered. From the corner of the living room, Claire watched with something like amusement or maybe pity. She didn't say a word. My father, Robert, came down the stairs and gave me a nod. That was it. No hug, no warmth. Just a nod like a formality. My kids had already disappeared into the house, eager to find their cousins. I stood there for a moment longer, coat still on hands, still gripping the bags. The foyer felt colder than outside. No one told me where to go. No one asked if I wanted tea. The hallway filled with laughter from the kitchen, Claire's voice, my mother's laugh, a clinking spoon in coffee. I dropped the bags near the stairs and followed the sound, trying to smile, trying to blend. But I never did. Later that night, I sat alone on the small couch in the den, apparently where we'd be sleeping. The room smelled of storage boxes and faint mildew. There were no sheets, no pillows. Just a folded blanket I found in the closet. My kids were brushing their teeth upstairs. Claire's kids had already claimed the second-floor bedrooms, bouncing on the beds like they owned the place. I stared at the ceiling and tried to pretend I didn't care. But when Noah came back and asked, "Why don't we get a real room like them?" I didn't know what to say. That's when I remembered something. 3 Christmases ago, I had stayed up all night wrapping Claire's gifts for Mom because she'd forgotten to send them in time. I'd written Claire's name on the tags in my own handwriting. No one noticed. No one thanked me. Back then, I told myself it didn't matter. But now, sitting in that den, I wasn't sure I believed that anymore. The next morning, I woke up with a crick in my neck and the dull ache of a restless night. Lily had rolled onto my arm and Noah was curled up beside me under the scratchy blanket. The den was cold, its single window letting in a sliver of gray light and the sound of snowplows down the street. I sat up slowly, careful not to wake them, and tiptoed to the kitchen. The house was already alive, coffee brewing, bacon, sizzling, laughter bouncing off the walls. Claire stood at the stove with Mom wearing matching aprons that said, "Merry and Bright." "Oh, you're up," Mom said when she saw me. "There's cereal in the pantry." She didn't ask how we slept. She didn't offer a plate. I poured a cup of coffee and leaned against the counter, watching Claire chatter about Ava's dance recital. Dad chimed in about Ben's new science trophy. They spoke in shorthand, layering pride into every sentence like it was a rehearsal for a family newsletter. My kids' names didn't come up once. Lily wandered in, still sleepy, dragging her stuffed rabbit. She reached up to me and I lifted her into my arms. "Oh, honey, don't get her used to being carried everywhere," Claire said, laughing. "She's 6, I replied softly. Claire shrugged, sipping her mimosa. The morning carried on like that, subtle jabs, pointed silences. At one point, Dad handed out chore assignments for Christmas Eve dinner. Claire was on table setting Ava on place cards, Ben on music. I wasn't mentioned. I raised my hand like a student. Need me to do anything? Oh, Mom said, blinking. Well, we're sort of set, but maybe you can pick up ice later, Ice. Sure, I said. Later that day, I overheard Claire talking to Mom in the living room. She didn't know I was around the corner. Emily's always been like this. She just doesn't fit. It's not her fault, I guess. Mom murmured something in agreement. I should have walked away. But I stood there motionless, letting the words sink in, the same way you let cold water hit your back when you've run out of hot. Sharp. Awakening. I thought about the first Christmas after my divorce, how I showed up with 2 toddlers and a smile trying to prove I could hold it all together. Claire had brought champagne, I'd brought wipes, crayons, and a second-hand casserole dish. That year, she got a silver bracelet from Mom. I got a scented candle already used once wick blackened. I didn't cry back then either. Instead, I helped clean the dishes. Now as I stood behind the wall hearing them dissect me like a topic of mild interest, I realized something painful in its clarity. I'd been auditioning for a part in this family for years, and they'd already cast someone else. That evening, I took the kids out for a walk to clear my head. Snow had started falling again, thick and steady. The neighborhood glowed with Christmas lights, some blinking cheerfully, others still. We passed a house with inflatable reindeer and a giant candy cane arch. Why don't we have decorations like that? Lily asked. We used to, I said, a long time ago. Noah looked up. Was it better then? I didn't answer, not directly. Instead, I said, let's take the long way back. By the time we returned, it was dinner time. The dining table was fully set, glittering with silverware and cloth napkins folded like stars. My mother had outdone herself as usual. Each place had a name card: Claire, Ava, Ben, Uncle Don, Grandpa, Robert, Linda. There was no card for me, or for my kids. I stood there for a full 5 seconds before anyone noticed. Oh, Mom said, flustered. I thought we'd do a kids' table in the den, more space that way. I looked over at the folding card table set near the TV with 3 plastic chairs and paper napkins. I looked back at my kids, Noah's face, falling, Lily, hugging her bunny tighter. Of course, I said. That makes sense. No one heard my voice crack. Or maybe they just didn't care. I helped carry the dishes anyway. That night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone in the den with a cup of lukewarm cocoa. The tiny Christmas tree in the corner blinked half-heartedly. 1 string of lights had already gone out. It was a used tree. Claire had brought a new one for the living room upstairs, all white and gold, classy, she called it. I thought of the place cards again, how my name hadn't even been scribbled on a napkin. Even an empty space would have been better than nothing. It would have acknowledged that I existed at all. The soft sound of a door creaking open broke the silence. Grandpa Walter shuffled in his cane, tapping lightly on the hardwood floor. He glanced around and gave a half-smile when he saw me. Mind if I join you? He asked. Please, I said, moving over on the couch. He lowered himself slowly, groaning as he settled in. For a while we just sat. No words, just the kind of silence that feels warm because it's shared. Then he said, You always liked the small trees. Remember that little one you decorated with paper stars when you were 10? I smiled. Yeah. I made a mess with the glue. You made something beautiful, he said. There was a long pause. Then he added, I saw the table tonight. I kept my eyes on my mug. It's fine, it's not. He said it so quietly, so simply that I felt tears well up despite myself, but I blinked them away. I just don't want to cause a scene, I whispered. You don't have to, he said. Sometimes the scene happens around you. You just have to stand still enough for people to notice. I didn't know what to say, so I nodded. He patted my hand once, then slowly stood up. Tomorrow will be different. As he left the room, I sat in the fading glow of the broken tree, the soft hum of silence pressing gently around me. From upstairs, muffled laughter floated down Claire's voice, light and easy, followed by my parents. They were telling stories. I used to be part of those stories. Now I was the pause in between them. Before going to bed, I checked on the kids. Noah had kicked off his blanket again, and Lily was hugging her bunny with both arms, even in sleep. I pulled the blanket over Noah and adjusted the pillow under Lily's head. Then I sat at the edge of the makeshift bed and whispered, "Tomorrow will be different." I didn't know how yet, but I believed it, and that was enough to sleep. Christmas morning always had a rhythm at my parents' house, cinnamon rolls in the oven, coffee brewing strong, and Claire's kids bouncing around the tree in matching pajamas. I used to be part of that rhythm, but this year it felt like I was watching it all from behind a pane of glass. I woke early and tiptoed around the basement room where the kids were still asleep. The air was cold. The space heater had stopped working sometime during the night. I wrapped Lily tighter in her blanket, then made my way upstairs. The smell of cinnamon hit me familiar and almost cruel. The kitchen was already bustling. Claire stood at the counter, arranging a tray of croissants she definitely hadn't baked. Mom stood next to her, humming and fussing with the icing on a bundt cake. I offered gently, "Need any help?" Claire didn't even look up. "We've got it." Mom glanced over, smiled tight, then said, "Maybe just set the table, Emily." I nodded. Setting the table used to be something Claire and I did together, bickering over napkin folds or who got to place Grandpa's special mug. Now there were printed name cards again, elegant ones this time, gold script on cream paper. As I laid out the silverware, I found myself hesitating at the main table. All spots were labeled. No Emily, no Noah, no Lily. "Mom," I asked, trying to keep my voice light, "where should I put us?" She walked over, drying her hands on a festive towel. "Oh, right. I think there's still the folding table in the garage. You could set that up for you and the kids in the den. It'll be cozy." She meant well. Or maybe she didn't. I couldn't tell anymore. Claire chimed in from behind, her voice laced with something too sweet. "Ben and Ava just get too distracted with all the noise. It helps to keep things organized, you know." I didn't answer. I just went to the garage and wrestled the old folding table out myself. It creaked with every movement, as if even the table resented being part of this setup. By the time I finished, the main table looked like a catalog photo cloth napkins folded into Stars Place settings, glinting under the chandelier. My table in the den had paper plates and a few juice boxes. Noah came in, rubbing his eyes. "Mom, where's everyone else sitting?" I forced a smile. "They're just next door. We've got our own cool space this year." He nodded, unconvinced. When we sat down for breakfast, Claire's voice carried easily from the main room. She was telling a story about Ava's piano recital, and everyone laughed. My kids chewed quietly, eyes down, as if they knew better than to interrupt. I wanted to join in. I wanted to mention Lily's drawing that got framed in her school's front office, but I stayed quiet. Later that morning, gift openings started. Claire's kids were called up one by one. Each gift had a handwritten tag and coordinating ribbon. Ava squealed over a necklace. Ben unwrapped a gaming console. My kids' gifts were in a separate pile on the side table. No tags, just wrapping paper that looked like leftover scraps. Lily opened a sweater 2 sizes too big. Noah got a puzzle we'd donated last year to a garage sale. Claire leaned in and whispered, "We tried our best. Holidays just sneak up on you, don't they?" I didn't respond. My jaw clenched, but I kept my eyes soft. I was starting to understand that saying nothing sometimes says the most. At lunch, things escalated in a way I hadn't expected. Claire raised her glass for a toast. "To family, the ones who show up, who give, who make this season what it is." She didn't look at me, but everyone else did. I lifted my water and smiled. "To family," I echoed. Even Grandpa didn't smile this time. He stared into his glass like it had betrayed him, and then he looked at me with something I couldn't place: regret, resolve. Whatever it was, it told me the silence was almost over. The day went on in scenes I wasn't invited to. Claire and her family posed for photos near the fireplace, all coordinated in deep reds and greens. Mom adjusted Ava's bow while Dad told Ben to stand up straighter. The camera clicked, capturing a family I used to belong to. Noah peeked out from behind the hallway wall. "Can we be in one too?" I crouched down beside him. "Not this time, sweetheart. Let's wait a bit." He looked confused. "But it's Christmas." I didn't have an answer that wouldn't hurt him. In the kitchen, I overheard Claire talking to Mom. "It's just easier when we keep things simple." I mean, Ava and Ben need routine. Emily's, well, her life's kind of chaotic right now. Mom didn't object. She just nodded. As if chaos was my fault. That afternoon, I brought out a tin of cookies Noah and Lily had helped bake. I placed it on the counter beside a 3-tiered tray of Claire's store-bought macarons. Homemade, Dad asked, picking one up. Yeah, I said, hopeful. He took a bite, nodded slightly, then reached for a macaron. Claire smiled, brushing a crumb off his shoulder. Dad's got taste. I watched Noah's face fall. He had decorated half those cookies himself. I placed a hand on his back and leaned down. They're just used to sugar that doesn't taste like love, I whispered. He smiled weakly, trying to be strong. Later, Grandpa Walter asked me to help him upstairs to rest. He was moving slower this year, and I offered my arm without hesitation. When we got to his room, he sat heavily on the edge of the bed and looked at me with tired eyes. I see everything, Emily. I didn't say anything. He continued, You've carried more than you ever should have had to. I sat beside him. It's not about me anymore. I just want the kids to feel seen. He reached into his drawer and pulled out a small wrapped box. This is for you. Not under the tree. Not for show. I took it quietly. Thank you. As I was about to leave, he added, They've mistaken your silence for weakness. That won't last forever. His words sat with me the rest of the day. Back downstairs, Claire announced she had a surprise. Ben got accepted into the STEM Academy. She beamed. Everyone cheered. Dad clapped him on the back. Mom pulled Claire into a proud hug. Then Claire turned to me. You homeschooled Noah last year, right? Must be hard keeping up. It wasn't a question. It was a jab wrapped in polite tones and public smiles. I simply smiled back. He built a model of the Mars rover last week, out of cardboard and glue. I think he's doing fine. A few people laughed softly, uncertain whether to encourage me or not. That evening as we sat down for dinner, Claire insisted Ava lead the prayer. She stood with confidence reciting from memory a long verse I recognized from a Thanksgiving years ago, one I had led. As she spoke, I looked around the table. The spots were full. All the real seats, the ones near the tree and under the chandelier, were occupied. I glanced at the folding table in the den, still set up, still distant. And then I saw it my name card. Folded, flipped, tucked discreetly behind a centerpiece almost hidden. As if someone had started to make space for me and then thought better of it. I didn't touch it. I just stared. After dinner, the final round of presents began. Claire handed out small envelopes, gift cards it seemed. When she reached me, she hesitated. Oh, Emily, she said, fishing in her purse. I think yours got left at home. I'll bring it by later. I nodded. Of course. She smiled, satisfied with my quiet response. And yet as she turned away, I saw Grandpa watching. His eyes followed every interaction like they were puzzle pieces slowly falling into place. He stood slowly, cane in hand, and cleared his throat. But before he could speak, Dad interjected, Walter, maybe you should sit down. Don't tire yourself. Grandpa shook his head steady. I'll sit when I'm done. His voice wasn't loud, but it carried. The room fell quiet. I held my breath. Something was shifting. Grandpa didn't speak right away. He looked around the room, making eye contact with each of us like he was weighing something invisible in the air. Then he said, Funny thing about families. They remember what they want and forget what they should. Claire let out a polite chuckle, unsure of his intent. Well, that's what makes holidays interesting, right? He ignored her. Instead, he turned toward me. Emily, could you help me back to my room? I need to show you something. I nodded and followed, feeling every eye on my back as we disappeared down the hallway. In his room, he handed me an old photo, one of me as a teenager standing beside him at the Christmas tree holding a hand-knitted stocking. I kept this, he said. Because that year you made all the stockings yourself. Everyone forgot, but not me. My fingers tightened on the edge of the picture. He pulled open a drawer and slid out a small folder. Just read it. After tonight. I tucked it into my bag, confused but respectful. Okay. As I helped him back out, he patted my hand. Sometimes silence is louder than applause. Back in the living room, the energy had shifted. People were gathered for a group photo again, this time near the tree. Claire called out, "Let's get the family together." Everyone moved in. Everyone except me. I watched from the edge as Ava took my old spot, my literal spot on the couch beside Mom. Linda smiled down at her. "You're always so graceful, darling." Noah tugged at my sleeve. "Why are we over here?" I knelt beside him. "Because this year we're observing." He looked puzzled, observing what I smiled gently, what people do when they think no one's watching. Claire held up her phone. "Smile, everyone." The flash went off, and I turned away. Later, after dessert, while kids played with toys and the adults chatted about stock markets and vacation homes, I slipped into my coat. Noah and Lily followed quietly. I didn't announce our departure. At the door, Claire caught up, heading out. "Yeah, it's getting late. Sorry about earlier," she said casually. "Not sorry at all. You know how it gets too many people, not enough space." I looked at her measured. "No worries," I said. "Space has a way of creating itself." She blinked, not quite catching it. "Well, Merry Christmas." I nodded. "You too." As I walked to the car, I heard Grandpa's voice behind me. "Emily." I turned. He was standing by the door holding something wrapped in tissue. "This belongs to you," he said. "Don't open it now. Open it when you feel forgotten again." I took it with both hands. "Thank you." His gaze softened. "Merry Christmas, my dear." Driving away, the lights of the house faded behind us. Noah was asleep before we hit the main road. Lily held the small, wrapped box in her lap, curious but patient. I didn't cry. I didn't rant. I simply drove forward, quiet, calm, but no longer invisible. Somewhere between the silence and the headlights, something inside me settled. Not in defeat, in clarity. And for the first time in years, I felt like I wasn't carrying the weight alone. 3 days after Christmas, I got a call from Grandpa Walter's lawyer. "We need to meet," he said simply. "Your grandfather asked for something to be read only in your presence. Today." I hesitated. "Is this about the folder he gave me?" There was a pause, partially, but there's more. I arrived at the small law office still holding the unopened envelope Grandpa had pressed into my hands that night. It was now slightly bent from being moved around my bag, but untouched. I had respected his words, waiting for a moment I felt forgotten again. The lawyer, a kind-eyed man named Mr. Harris, welcomed me in. "Emily, your grandfather made some changes to his estate 2 months ago." He slid over a file. I opened it slowly, my breath shallow. Grandpa had left everything he had, his house, his savings, even a small collection of rare coins to me. There were no conditions, just a short note attached in his handwriting. "For the one who stayed kind when no one remembered her name." Tears burned at the corners of my eyes, but I held them back. He also requested that this be shared with the family at the New Year's brunch, Mr. Harris continued. "He wanted you to be there, seated in the same spot you were denied." I smiled faintly. "He planned it all, didn't he, Mr.?" Harris nodded. On New Year's Day, I arrived at the Carson house again, but this time I didn't knock like a guest. I walked in. The table was set. Claire, ever the hostess, now bustled around, making sure everything looked perfect. My parents were already seated, glasses of mimosa in hand. Ava and Ben were playing by the fireplace. When they saw me, conversation paused. Claire forced a polite smile. "Oh, you came." I nodded. "Grandpa asked me to." I walked past her, past the stunned expressions, and took my old seat, the one Ava had claimed at Christmas. No one said anything. Mr. Harris entered minutes later with a leather portfolio in hand. "I'm here to read Walter Carson's final letter to his family." Claire looked shocked. "I thought that was handled privately." "He left 2 messages," he said. "One legal, one personal." He opened the paper. "To my family, I've watched you grow, succeed, and sometimes fail to see what matters. One of you held the weight of silence with grace. That silence spoke louder than all the noise at our gatherings." "You forgot her?" "I did not." Claire's lips parted. Linda's brows drew tight. Robert's face stiffened. "So I leave what I have not because of blood, but because of presence. Emily was there when no one else was. For me, and for her children. This isn't about money, it's about memory. I hope you learn to value both. The room sat in stunned stillness. Noah clutched my hand under the table. Lily leaned against my arm. Linda cleared her throat. Emily, we didn't know you didn't ask, I said softly. Not bitter, just truthful. Robert opened his mouth, then closed it. Claire looked down at her lap, then back at me. So, it's all yours, I nodded. Yes, but this seat I'm just borrowing it back. No one laughed. No one argued. They couldn't. Not because I yelled, but because I didn't have to. I folded the letter, placed it back on the table, and looked around the room that once shrunk to leave me out. Today it had no choice but to expand. After the letter was read, silence lingered like dust hanging in sunlight, visible, weightless, and hard to clean away. Claire broke it first, her voice slightly brittle. I didn't know he thought so highly of you. I didn't reply. Instead, I helped Lily pour herself a glass of juice, adjusting the cup to keep her from spilling. Maybe we should have invited you for Christmas after all, Linda said with a tight laugh that tried to sound casual, but couldn't hide the tremble in her throat. I smiled faintly. It's all right. Robert shifted in his chair. Emily, it was never personal. Things just got busy. Noah leaned into me, then his voice soft but clear. It felt personal. Everyone turned toward him. He didn't flinch. I saw how Grandma looked at me when we arrived, like I wasn't supposed to be here, like we were extras in someone else's scene. Claire tried to speak, but Noah cut in. But Grandpa looked at us like we belonged, and that was enough. A long, awkward pause followed. Mr. Harris stood and nodded to me. I'll be in touch regarding the rest. The paperwork is straightforward. I stood smoothing the front of my dress. Thank you for coming today. As I made my way toward the front door, I could feel their eyes on my back. Not with anger, not even with guilt, just recognition. They finally saw me, and they didn't know what to do with that. I paused near the living room arch where Grandpa's old walking cane still leaned against the corner. I picked it up, gently ran my hand along its worn wood and set it back down. Claire followed, stopping just short of the threshold. Why didn't you say anything all these years, she asked. You could have told us how it felt. I looked at her steady. Would it have mattered? She blinked, then looked away. I thought if I kept quiet long enough, maybe someone would notice without being told. And he did, she murmured. Yes, I said. He always did. She hesitated, then stepped aside. Do you want help packing up his things? The coins, the books? I shook my head. No. I'll come back later. This isn't the right moment. Claire nodded, her shoulders slightly curved inward. Outside, the sky was overcast but not heavy. Lily skipped a little ahead with Noah jogging to catch up his scarf trailing behind him like a flag. I stood for a moment on the porch, looking back at the house, once a place that made me feel invisible. Now it didn't hold power over me. It was just walls, windows, and people learning how to look again. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't sought revenge, but something had shifted, and they all felt it. It was the kind of silence that didn't beg to be filled. It just settled in, quietly permanent. The next morning, I returned alone. There was a quiet to the house that felt unfamiliar, no clinking of dishes, no whispers behind half-shut doors. Just the creak of wooden steps as I moved through the hallways I once tiptoed through as a guest in my own family. I stepped into Grandpa's study now, technically mine, though the thought hadn't settled yet. Stacks of coin albums lined the walls, the old globe still spun slightly off balance. On the desk, a small tin box with my name in his handwriting sat waiting. Inside were handwritten notes. One read, Emily, you've always listened more than you spoke. That's why you see things clearly. Another they'll notice eventually, even if they never say it out loud. Tears didn't fall. They just shimmered at the edge of my eyes like morning dew, visible only when light hit just right. I packed slowly, carefully preserving not just objects but moments. A letter opener he used religiously, his reading glasses still marked at page 127 of a novel he'd never finish. A photograph of him with me as a toddler on his shoulders, both of us laughing. By noon, I stepped outside and found Claire sitting on the porch steps, her coat tight around her knees. "I didn't know he was writing you letters," she said. I nodded. I think I was always too loud to hear him. I sat next to her, placing the small tin between us. "He didn't dislike you," I offered. Claire gave a dry chuckle. "But he saw you. That's the difference." We watched the road in silence for a while. Then she asked, "What are you going to do with the house I'm keeping it?" "For now. I want Noah and Lily to know where they came from, but on their terms." She nodded. "If you ever need help." "I'll ask," I said, though we both knew I might not. Before I left, I walked into the dining room, the scene of so many past Christmases. I pulled out the chair where I'd seen her children sitting, the one that used to be mine, and ran a hand over its edge. Then I placed a folded napkin on it, embroidered with my initials. Not to claim it, not anymore, but to mark that I had returned and had nothing left to prove. Later at home, I hung Grandpa's framed military medal beside my children's school awards. Different types of recognition, but equally earned. That evening, Noah asked, "Will we go back next Christmas?" I looked at him. "Would you want to?" He thought a moment. "Only if it's because we're wanted, not just tolerated." I smiled, smoothing his hair. "Then maybe we'll make new traditions. Ones where everyone has a seat." As the fireplace crackled and Lily hummed a tune on the floor, I felt the warmth settle, not from the heat, but from a quiet certainty. I had not raised my voice. I had not demanded space. But still I was seen. Sometimes the most powerful things we do are the ones done in silence, no applause, no confrontation, just presence, just clarity. And sometimes being seen doesn't come from asking louder, but from walking in with nothing to prove and everything to protect.